Everybody. This week we'll talk about some applications. I have some examples to share. Not many. I mean, we're breaking new ground with this whole concept of VR in education. And there's some low-hanging fruit. There's some pretty obvious examples, but there's a lot of room for us to generate ideas. So I'm hoping that this will be more of a fruitful dialogue and conversation for us. And I'm hoping that we'll get some participation too. I brought a scribe, Jenny Griffith, she's joining us and she'll be able to annotate our ideas and our thoughts. And so let's go ahead and get started. I have, like the previous sessions, I have a Canvas course that I've created. This is open to all. You don't have to be within my institution or at a certain school to be able to access this. I'll review the previous modules. This is the content that we covered in the previous installations in this series, where we looked at the cameras, showed examples of videos and pictures in those cameras. We discussed not all of the platforms, but a pretty good overview of what's on the market today. A lot of these are good they're used in the real estate business for especially showing homes and properties, but we can utilize them in education as well. All of them have free components. Many of them have, if you're willing to pay for premium accounts, then you'll get premium options for hosting and interactions as well. So you can review that content if you'd like. This week we're going to focus on this module called applications. I'm going to show you some examples and then we'll open up the mics to people and we'll be able to talk through and hopefully generate some good ideas. So the first example that I will share, and I shared this in last week's webinar, this is from a colleague of mine. I gave him a camera, sent him to South Africa for a study abroad. Well, I didn't send him, but he elected to go, and I provided the camera with the point that this is part of a class, and so that we can document the places that the students would be going and use it for the next group of students who would be going, that they can see, here's where we're going to go, here are the people that we're going to meet. And so he was able to put this interactive content right into Canvas. Now, what he chose to do was he created a group in Facebook where he can include the students, and he uploaded the media there, and then he embedded the media into a content page. And so what you're seeing is actually Facebook content. And if I were to click on like, comment, or share, it would actually load me outside of Canvas into this Facebook group where I can see the content again, and this is where I would be able to interact with the content. So to share it, you can embed the content, grab the embed code, put it into Canvas. You can also incorporate videos. Turn the volume down, so he was able to capture some of the events that took place as well. And he put this into a tabbed interaction. So he was able to get, various interactions within Canvas. So this is one application that you can do if there's a study abroad program or some kind of field trip. Then you can document in 360 and allow other people the immersive experience of seeing the people and the places. All right, so another way that you can use 360 would be a campus tour of sorts. My disadvantage, which I've mentioned in the previous webinars, is that I work remotely. I support our ed tech initiatives and projects, and I don't reside on a physical campus. And so my campus is Disney. And so I went to Disney here in Orlando, and I shot 360 pictures and videos, and I used ThingLink. And so just replace the magical place on Earth with your own institution, which is the most magical academic institution on Earth. And so this would be good. It could be good for prospective students. It could be a scavenger hunt. It could, and so that's one way that you can use 360 is mapping out a physical location and giving people the option to navigate. I'll put this up on full screen here to share. But with ThingLink, you can have hotspots as well. And so it's as if I'm walking through the park or walking through campus, or you could have it set up where you're walking through a laboratory or something significant to your field. It could be a geological site and such. And then with ThingLink, you can have hotspots, so I can put pop-ups There could be text, pictures, audio. I could put a video. I could embed a Microsoft form or a Google Doc, and then navigate around and view the content in an interactive standpoint. And if you have a third-party quizzing software, for example, you could include some quizzing questions throughout. Compare and contrast, this as opposed to another thing, or elaborate, on certain elements. Here's a tour that I took from University of Nottingham. So this is an actual video where you can walk through the School of Psychology, and you can see, now it's a video in that it plays and it'll jump from scene to scene, but it's static 360 images. And so they're able to see, here's a study place, a student lounge of sorts, and then it jumps to a computer lab, a Mac lab of sorts, and they were able to label and things. So it's descriptive in that sense that people can visit. Now it looks interesting. It almost recruits me to go to University of Nottingham and become a student there, so I can drive a VR car with a fan that probably is attached to a computer, and it blows, as according to the velocity that you're driving. And I actually drove one of those in VR, and it was a Formula car, and I did not do very well because I don't know how to drive a Formula car, but it was fun and low stakes. So this is an interesting, concept, the concept of a tour. So another example of applications for 360 is this concept of hotspots, and the platform that I chose to showcase for these examples is ThingLink. Once again, so this is a 360 image, just a street in Hawaii, and I was able to put various hotspots. I was able to come up with thumbnail images for these hotspots, and you can see it interacts with my mouse hovering over. It kind of pulses. It lets the viewer know that, by the way, this is something to look at. Now, if I were on a VR device, even if it's one of those like Google Cardboard where you put your phone in the device, then as I look around, whenever the hotspot becomes the center point of my field of view, and there's a little white dot that hovers over that, then it'll know that once I pause there, that okay, I want to interact with that hotspot. And so in this case, I have my hotspot, I have an image coming up, I have some text on the image. If I interact with this one, then again, I have an image with text. For some of them, I have voiceover. I think that I muted this site, so let me unmute that real quick. And you can make the thumbnails relevant to the content, symbolic. Maybe a thumbnail for video, another one for text, another for an assessment, some kind of quiz.
Billboards don't exist in Hawaii.
So with this one, I had a voiceover and an image and some text. Here's one where they talk about beaches.
All beaches in Hawaii are public.
All beaches in Hawaii are public, so I can learn about different elements by clicking on the hotspots. So that's an example. This is actually my favorite example of hotspots, and I need to find out who did this, but I believe it was in like elementary school. Some kids, they stuck a 360 camera inside a beehive, and they have interactions with voiceover.
Can you find the queen? She is using this frame to lay eggs. We have to find her each time we check them.
So that's a little kid with voiceover. Here's a bee survey, so I could take this survey. Have you ever been stung by a bee? And then I could submit that. This is Google Forms, it could be Microsoft Forms, it could be some kind of assessment that you give them.
This is a bee.
Another picture with text and voiceover. You can embed a video that they can play right in the interaction or a map that they can interact with. And then you can see the beehive person up there. I think they also have maps to other thing links, similar to what I showed at the very beginning, where you can navigate around. And so here I can see their beehive, and I can jump to other places, and I can see the scenes at the bottom below as well. Interactive. So hotspots are a great way to incorporate assessments into 360. Some other examples that I found just in searching, and I don't know what people's disciplines are on what their fields of study are on this call. My background is educational technology and psychology, and so I tend to lean towards those. But here's an Arctic geologist where he's elaborating on the scene, setting the stage, and then interacting. And so you could do this with a flat video. It could just be somebody talking. I mean, we've been doing that for generations, but it adds a layer of immersion to be able to incorporate that as a 360 video. I won't show this during this session, but if you have access to this course, I would definitely take a look at this, which is called Introduction. The Salton Sea is Dying.
This is the Salton Sea. It is 35 miles long and 15 miles wide, making it the largest lake in California.
I think they did a fantastic job in the production of this video, and there's actually a couple videos that are pretty powerful. And so if you have a production crew, that's definitely possible. Who's ever wanted to visit the Grand Canyon, in a raft? It looks like they set this up on a tripod, and they have some boats. Oops. And in the software, you can take various 360 videos and you can edit them together and to make one tour, or you can have them each be separate clips. If you're sticking to 2 minutes and 37 seconds, for example, I think that's an appropriate chunked content for the course. This other one, again, if you have access to this course, I would definitely look at these humanitarianism videos. You can, in this case, talking about deportation is different from a scholarly.
Is one of the largest cities in Mexico.
Sorry, I'm going to bump that sound down. Talking about humanitarianism, talking about deportation, the concepts is different from a scholarly academic perspective with reading, as opposed to creating an interaction that is immersive. Actually seeing the places, seeing the people affected for positive or negative. It's important, I think, to be immersed in some of these topics. Interview situations, panel discussions can be very powerful as well. So space and technology. This video is called The First Panoramic View of Earth from Aboard the International Space Station. You might have seen this on social media, for example, but being able to tour the space station normally would be reserved for, if you can visit the Kennedy Space Center or the Museum of Science and Industry. But here you get an immersive, and I think that this would be an example of something more powerful if you had a VR headset on and you could actually look around and experience it with the astronaut and be able to, float around. I think that would be an interesting sensation as well. The Saturn launches. I've actually been to Cape Canaveral during shuttle launches, but I never had, even though I was present, safe distance in the bleachers, I never had such an immersive experience like being able to see the shuttle up close and personal. I have other examples on this page as well that you can view. There's some fun examples as well. Good thing that's muted that I found. Nickelodeon, and it's an interactive experience. So it depends what your production budget is. I didn't think to include it in this, but there's also a video that I saw once that where you can experience autism, the sensation of autism, where you're at a mall and then certain elements distract you, but it highlights you, and other things become dimmed out, and so it really focuses your perspective on certain things. But it's hard to focus on one thing because the it kind of forces you, because since you're immersive, you focus on what they want you to focus instead of what you would naturally focus on if you didn't experience autism. So those are the examples that I have here. Talking through, I mean, there are some applications for perhaps health labs if you're in a nursing program, and you can view a laboratory scenario, identify which elements of this lab are out of place, or what things are going well. Is there any equipment that we don't have? And that could be a sort of assessment in itself, or observing a procedure and observing everything that happens. And it could be actors, that you hire, or it could be a real auditorium type operation, and then have the students comment. I'm not from the medical field, so I'm speculating on that, but I would imagine a laboratory setting would be very appropriate for VR 360. Courtrooms would be interesting if you could put a situation, a scenario, a forensic scenario, such as an eyewitness experience, have them immersed in an environment where something happens, and they would be acting just as a regular person. This would require a VR headset, such as there's an accident, or there's an attack, or there's something that would be worthy of an eyewitness testimony in court, and have the students view that, but they can only view it one time, and then assess how accurate their recollection of the experience is, especially after repeated questioning or consultation with lawyers and such examples as that. And then you could be able to test from a first-hand experience this eyewitness. And I think what would be interesting about a situation like that is that it's 360, and so you can't be looking at everything on the screen all at once. Just like in real life, you would have a limited vision that you can focus on, and perhaps something happens behind you and it catches your attention, and you have to swing around, but you might miss that first part of it. And so how does that play out in real life when you're studying forensic psychology and such? There's sciences, geography, history, but I actually wanted, I'm going to give the screen over to you, Jenny, and open up the mics if we'd like. If anybody, if you want, I can open up the microphones. I probably won't open up the microphones to all, but if you'd like the microphone, please raise your hand and I'll unmute any of you who request that. I'd love to hear any of your ideas and comments as well. Has anybody explored any aspects of 360 video or images that you would like to share? Or if you're interested in exploring, what do you think are the first things that you would want to incorporate into your classroom?
I'll say something that I think you touched on a little bit, but I think it's pretty cool when you can use ThingLink to give virtual tours by using the hotspots to go into another ThingLink. So in essence, if for example you were on a map or something and you wanted to show what the actual location looked like, you could use ThingLink. So for a campus, have a little hotspot to show, maybe what the biology building, where it is, and then if you click on it, it opens up into another ThingLink of a 360 video, or even photo, I guess, 360 photo showing, the atrium inside the biology building or something like that. I think those are some pretty cool you could take it and run with that with, in many different styles or scenarios. For example, like a lab room, go into a lab and show the different tools or features within the lab and kind of give more information or videos about the equipment or anything like that. I think there's a lot of applications in those areas for virtual tours.
Absolutely. And I can see a mix of both video and pictures. Some are appropriate for some things. Like, do you want to go look at the science lab? Well, that could be a picture, unless there's some kind of interaction going on. But do you want to look at the student lounge? Well, maybe that would be a great video because you can see people coming and going and see the interactions, the type of groups that collect there. I'm thinking kind of from a student orientation perspective, not really assessment at this point. But yeah, I think that's a great thing that we can leverage these days, is that it's not just a static 3D 360 element on the page, but you can link them to other elements.
Yeah, and like even I actually did it once in a biology lab where there were different models of like the anatomy of a heart, for example, or a skeleton structure, and in that lab I put the hotspots on the models within the lab, and then if they clicked on that particular model, you could zoom in and have labels of, for example, the different sections of the heart or the different bones in a skeleton. It was pretty effective, pretty cool application of it.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I've done something similar for mapping out a brain, for neuropsychology, where I had, and yeah, so hotspots on the brain. I didn't do that in VR because that wasn't available back then. I think it was a storyline interaction, but mapping out the brain and then talking about the different aspects of it. But I can see benefits to this might be a little bit in the future, but 3D VR immersion of the brain where you can actually interact from a 360 standpoint of how do these systems interact with each other, assuming that you'd be like a microscopic observer of a system that, a brain is not very big. But it seems like science, really science and medicine are apt to be the early adopters of true 3D, immersive environments. But I hope that it branches out to psychology and forensics and law and things like that. A courtroom, that would be great, depending on the budget. If you can get actors to act out a courtroom setting or act out a scenario which would end up in court somehow. I don't want to say an assault, but something where interaction of the people, the parties involved, would end up being something that is deliberated in a courtroom setting. Anybody else have any other ideas?
Sean, this is Jenny. I'm wondering if it's possible to use 360 video and images as a way to ask students to reflect on a specific environment. So for example, maybe a doctor's office. So you're in with a patient and you do a 360 video of the room, but there are certain things that are out of place, or maybe certain things that shouldn't be there. And it's up to the student to look at the 360 video or image to determine, okay, what is out of place? What could be problematic in this room? Or potentially a physical classroom. How would you, looking at a video of the classroom, how would you, as the instructor or the trainer, rearrange the tables and the chairs and the desks in this room? So maybe you're not using the ThingLink or the hotspots, but you're creating a physical environment to get students to think about, okay, what would I do differently, or how would I move things around in this space?
Absolutely, and that concept of an assignment can extend to various industries. If you look at industrial psychology, for example, or human factors, things like that, you can look at your first example of here's a doctor's office, here's a waiting room, here's how it's set up, what factors help to calm the patient, and which things could be stressors. If the person's in a tense situation, what can we do to best alleviate this from a human factors perspective? How can we correct this, or what are we doing right? So, you can take a 360 element and have students write reflection papers, or they can, if you were to use Studio, you can upload it into Studio, and students can comment on the video when they see something that, those magazines, they're out of date. And so that means they're just going to end up on their phone, and they're going to be on Facebook, and then they're going to be angry because of, politics or whatever. I don't know. Or, this one's blasting music or blasting the TV, and it's too loud or something. Or this one has nice plants and using aromatherapy or something. And it doesn't have to be just a doctor's office. It could be a therapist's room. If you're practicing therapy and you have your own office, how can you arrange the office? How do you place the chairs in accordance with the window? What kind of environmental cues can you alleviate or introduce to increase or decrease stressors for the people who you're seeing? So yeah, take an environmental video. It could be anywhere. It could be an active volcano, and your geology students can say, okay, what's the approach that we want to take here? How do we set up camp in this place? What's the best spot in this location to set up camp? And then how would we do that? Great thoughts, Jenny. Could be, if you flip this on the students as well, and it depends on our budget and on our vision and scope of our programs, but if you can get cameras in the students' hands, have them generate content, and then have the students comment on each other's interactions that they've created and give more holistic feedback. Because ultimately, I see VR as a way that we can change some of the paradigms of education, from instructors giving lectures to students being participants, and even maybe collaborators or creators of content. So, and as cameras are getting cheaper and cheaper, I think if price is an entry point into the market, then I would recommend the 360 Nano S. I think is a very easy way to enter the market. I'm going to put a link there. Not that I'm paid or endorsing them necessarily, but it's only $180 on Amazon. It integrates with an iPhone, or you can use it standalone. And $180 is cheaper than some textbooks in courses or lab fees, So, and it's a piece of hardware that can last, theoretically longer than a course. Not theoretically, practically, it could last an entire the duration of a program. Any other thoughts, Jenny or Thad or anybody on the call?
I have one more thought.
For it. Yeah.
I think when you were talking about students, creating assignments and things like that, I think it would also be an excellent way to have students generate a report, for example, or even tell a story. Use a 360 interaction to tell a story based on different characters who might be in the scene or something like that. And you and I had discussed or talked in the past about kind of taking a page out of the book of the entertainment industry and engaging and using their techniques. And excuse me, sorry. Look at the gaming industry, for example, and use some of those. There's actually some genres of games out there where you move from scene to scene in the story and try and solve the puzzle or figure out a situation or find a lost person or whatever, something like that, and you can kind of use some of those ideas or concepts to drive your own content and your own story, in essence.
I think storytelling is brilliant. When we have one program at one of our affiliates where the student has to get out into the community and they have to volunteer at a food pantry or a soup kitchen or something dealing with humanitarianism, benefiting the community, and they have to actually give public service as part of that, and they have to interview the leader who's operating that facility. They have to create I don't remember, a Padlet or a Sway interaction and then present it to the class. But if you were to introduce 360, get it in a student's hand and say, okay, capture, some of your experience and build a story and then submit that story, and that would be part of their deliverable, part of their grade, knowing that it doesn't have to be sophisticated. It's not like a Hollywood production necessarily, but it's really easy to stitch videos together, and I think that would be fantastic for building a story. It could be a group project too. It could be a class project where everybody contributes something and then you stitch it all together, and at the end, then, what better way to build community, especially in online programs where people aren't necessarily in the same location or the same time zone or even the same country or continent, but to be able to bring them together through virtual reality. I think that would be an amazing application. We should jump on that. Let's look for some places at our institutions and give that a try.
Yeah, totally.
We can revisit that and expand on those notes and try some of those things out and then come back and report. We should get a group together. Stephanie, talking to you, should get a Canvas community group and try some of these things out and then report over at InstructureCon on our efforts. That'd be a lot of fun. If nobody else has any ideas, feel free to raise your hand and go to me, and I will unmute you. But if there's nothing else, then I'll go ahead and end this a few minutes early. I'll try and get a video up. I'm going to have to do some editing, I think, and get a video up. I'm going to be out of the office starting Friday, so hopefully I can get that by tomorrow so that we can have this on record. I'd like to thank everybody for attending this session. This concludes our series on getting started with 360 video, and I look forward to working with you and further exploring this topic and see what comes of this. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you.